you're excited, you want to set up your home studio, you're connecting everything, and then there's one critical piece missing that's like $3, but you just haven't ordered it, and now you can't use your stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, totally.
This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go.
hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. I am your host, Benedictine, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, Malcolm Owen Flood. How are you, Malcolm?
Hey, man, I'm good. I'm very good. I got lost in the woods yesterday, and I am sore and tired from getting out of there.
You got lost in the woods?
Yeah, I went on a trail run, and I just kind of found this random route online that looked pretty fun and pretty long. It was like 10K. And turns out some of those trails don't exist anymore. And I just kind of like just came into this logged area, and I was like, well, I bet it's just on the other side of this logged area. So I like hiked through the logging cutoff and then into the woods because there was no trail on the other side. I mean, I never really felt lost. I was pretty positive I could find my way back to the world. But I was like hiking through just pure woods, no trails for like 30, 40 minutes. It was great.
Yeah. Sometimes you find the coolest spots that way or the coolest trails that way.
Totally.
Sometimes you're just hoping to get back as soon as possible.
Yeah, it was like 20 minutes into the middle of nowhere, and my phone's data ran out, and I was like, oh, I don't even have a map anymore.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah, that really sucks. Do you have any like dangerous animals or anything where you are?
Technically, yes, and actually there's been sightings pretty recently, so I should have been more careful. We have bears and cougars.
Cougars, oh yeah.
But like it's pretty far-fetched that you'll run into one around here. I mean, it does happen, but definitely not very often. And then they're not as scary as people think either. Like they like to stay away from you generally.
Yeah.
So it's usually fine. I'm never really worried.
Yeah, I saw this crazy video recently of this runner who came, like I think he found baby cougars, and then the mother showed up, and
Yes.
like it was, I don't know, it's like a 10-minute video or so, and the mother was chasing him. And
it is the most
it's
terrifying
very, very
thing.
scary.
Yeah. So that would be the worst.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened, fortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that poor guy.
No, we don't have anything like that here. There are a couple of wolves, I think they are back, but people never really see them. And then, boars.
Yeah.
Boars are pretty much the most
boars.
dangerous thing around, but yeah.
Yeah, we don't have boars. We do have elk.
Okay, yeah.
But they're fine. If we have any Australians listening to our podcast, there's this funny thing where Australians moved to Whistler, this big ski town near us, somewhat near us, and I've had this conversation with so many Australians, and they just are terrified of the animals here, like bears and stuff like that. Like, just think we're nuts for being willing to go outside with those things walking around.
Australians are terrified?
Australia has like the most terrifying wildlife in the world. No questions asked. It's
everything in
insane.
Australia is trying to kill you. Like, it's
Totally. It's yeah. And I've had this conversation with multiple Australians, and all my friends have had it too. They just think bears are terrifying, and we're like, bears are fine. They want to rummage through your garbage, maybe, but
yeah, I wouldn't go. Like, I would go nowhere without a guide in Australia. Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, that's whatever you're used to.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Okay, so this week is part 2 of what we started last week.
Yes. If you don't remember, we were talking about the gear you can get on a budget to have a good recording studio. And we're talking about this because obviously there's a ton of gear out there available, and there's always new stuff coming out. And Benny and I probably are more into gear than we should be, and we've tried a lot of it. And we thought that our advice would probably be helpful in helping people steer towards like gear that we know is great and not too expensive, just so you're not buying something and having to replace it down the road. That is kind of the goal here.
Yes, exactly. And if you want to have a list of things that we recommend, you can go to the selfrecordingband.com/gear guide and download a PDF gear guide that's well structured and it gives you a starting point, a list of things you need. It kind of also explains like priorities or the hierarchy of gear, if you will. So you know what's more important, what's less important when it comes to, for example, choosing the right interface and stuff like that. So it's a pretty neat, short, easy to consume PDF guide that will help you quickly. Go to theselfrecordingband.com/gear guide and download that completely for free. And you can also go to the show notes page of this episode and the last episode. So if you go to theselfrecordingband.com/68 or /69, it works just the same for every single episode. Then you'll find the show notes to these episodes, and we're also going to list the stuff that we are mentioning in these episodes there for you. So you don't have to take notes. You still can, but it's all going to be in the show notes as well.
To quickly recap, last week we talked about microphones, DIs, and the interface. I'm sure other stuff kind of came up in passing, but that was really the 3 topics we covered. So that was kind of like, going from the instrument into a mic and into an interface. And now we are on the other side where we are looking at monitoring and stuff in the computer and whatnot.
Exactly. So let's start with the computer, actually, because that's the next part of the chain, if you will. Like we have covered interfaces. Now the audio is in the computer. I think we shouldn't go into computer specs and stuff like that, because I think that it doesn't really matter. If your main thing is that you want to record, every like decent computer from the last 5 to 10 years, I think, will do the job. The more you get into mixing and running a lot of plugins and stuff, the better the computer needs to be. But I don't want to get into the whole PC versus Mac debate and whatever. Like, just use whatever computer you have, and if it's too slow, get a new one. But that's usually not the bottleneck if you're recording.
Yeah, that's a really good point, though. Is that for just recording, you don't have to spend that much money. Where for mixing, you have to spend a fortune.
Yes, at some point.
It's a good distinguishing thing. But you should be at least aware of what you need to do with some MIDI instruments and stuff like that. That would be the only thing that I could see really coming to bite you, is not being able to run the VSTs you want and whatnot. And amp sims can be a little CPU heavy as well, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. What you have to have, though, is you have to have a DAW. That's the software that you use to record your audio. Like, it's the program you run to record and or mix and edit, whatever you want to do with it. And when it comes to DAWs, DAWs stands for Digital Audio Workstation. It's a matter of personal preference and workflow more than anything, I think. Unless you go with a very, very basic entry-level DAW, like you could, in theory, use GarageBand, or what else is there, Audacity, or some of those very free or very cheap DAWs. They can work to get started, but we would highly recommend choosing one of the major DAWs, whatever is the one that you want to work with. There are light versions of those that you can try, but I at least would say that either go with Logic, Cubase, Pro Tools, or Ableton, depending on the genre you're recording. Ableton is really cool for electronic stuff. We wouldn't recommend it for band stuff, I think. But whether you go with like Cubase, Logic, or Pro Tools, or Reaper is great as well and cheap. Mm-hmm. All of those will get the job done. They have different feature sets, different workflows, but the most important thing is your personal preference and what you're used to or whatever you like. But they don't sound different. They have all the functions, the basic functionality that you could ever need to record your band. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's really probably the most commonly overthought element of the recording setup is like, oh, which one should I get? And you end up not getting good at any of them because you keep changing. Just really choose one. I might just recommend that you get a full version of something, not like there's Pro Tools First, I think it's called, or something like that, where it's like, it's just a really limited piece of junk.
Yeah, it is.
And Ableton has a like LE as well that I wouldn't recommend as choosing. Like, just get something that is, you've got it and you've got everything you need. Really, Reaper is hard to beat in that regard, where it's free and it can do everything.
Yes.
It's definitely not my favorite, but like, I know people that use it professionally and they're awesome.
Yes. I have to say, though, that the Cubase Artist and Cubase Element versions are pretty cool. They have like limitations when it comes to track count and some other things, but they work really well. So you can start and see if the Cubase workflow is for you, and if so, you can buy the full version. If not, you can switch to something else. So I can recommend these. But again, like we're talking, even if you go if like when you buy the most expensive version of those software programs, you're looking at, I don't know, $500, $600 or something like that. Or I don't know, like at least in euros, it's 400, 500 euros. And I don't know, I think it's worth spending that money if you're serious. Like if you're making a record, especially an album, or if you're at all like ambitious, want to sell records or want to make competitive records, then spending those dollars is money well spent, I think.
Yeah. Another bit of advice I just thought of is maybe look at where you're planning to learn about your DAW. Like if you have a favorite YouTuber you're already following for how to operate a DAW, you want to use the same DAW they're using, right? Because like otherwise that it's not going to be helpful. If you have Benny's course, the self-recording band course, and you're following along anything in there that's not really about DAW stuff necessarily, but I'm sure there's some stuff in there, then you're going to want Cubase, right? It's going to be easier for you to follow along in situations like that.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so choose whatever you think is right for you. Maybe start with the free Reaper and version, like with the test version of Reaper. See if that works. If so, spend the $60 or whatever, or $200 for the professional license or whatever it is, and stick with that, or change to something else. But that's a really cool thing, a place to start. I think I would start with that if I would do it again.
I think so too. It's just like so easy to get into. One more advice though.
Yeah.
I learned so much about my DAW from being shown things by other people, like hands-on. So if you have a bandmate that's not half bad at a DAW, maybe go in with whatever they're already using. You know, like the collaboration between bandmates on the same DAW is definitely a handy thing.
Yes, and maybe we should, and then we should move on. But maybe we should also say again that GarageBand is cool for demos or like capturing ideas, but it's not really professional DAW for many reasons. And as soon as you start working with other people, have them like with mix engineers, and if you want to transfer files to someone else, it's gonna be it's a real pain. It's a real pain. I've been working with a bunch of people who use GarageBand, and they were trying to get the files over to me, and it's not cool. Like locating the WAV files and MIDI files and figuring out how to do 24-bit or whatever. It's just a pain. And it's compatible with Logic, so that's a workaround. But still, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's if you're just like starting and want to just be recording today and you've already got it on your computer, it is awesome for that. It's really like a fun program to use. But as soon as you, like if you like it at all, just get Logic.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, it is just a dumb version of Logic.
Yeah, totally. All right. So you're in the DAW. You have recorded stuff. You've edited it or not. You are you want to listen to what you've recorded, and you want to make sure you want to be able to do a quality check, quality control. Even if someone else is going to be editing or mixing it, you still need to hear what you're recording. You need to hear what you're exporting, what you're comping. You need some sort of reliable monitoring. And even if you're not mixing, you need monitoring that you can trust. You need something that you can learn. That's I think the most important thing. You need to learn what you're monitoring, whatever you use sounds like. So that could be a room with speakers, but that's going to be the most flawed. It's the room is going to be, every room has problems, and it's going to be pretty problematic. The speakers, if you're not spending a whole lot of money, will be pretty problematic, or not flat at least, and not really a reliable thing. And so the best thing you can buy on a budget are headphones, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Even though it's the exact opposite of my workflow, I totally agree. This is the best for 99% of bands out there.
Yes. So get speakers just so you can listen in the same room together with your bandmates, so you have something everyone can listen on, and like you don't have to wear headphones all day, which is very fatiguing as well. So just get some speakers, but don't see them as the reliable tool that shows you all of the problems, because they likely won't. The thing you're going to be listening for, like really detailed stuff, and when it comes to making first mixing moves or to really judge the quality of your recordings, use headphones for that. And there are a couple of models that are just tried and true, that are tested and that people use a lot for professional mixing, but also for tracking, that we can recommend. And there are closed and open models. That's the main difference between, or those are the two camps, basically. And then there are different models and manufacturers, of course. But maybe let's explain real quick what the difference is between closed and open and why you should get one or the other.
Right. Well, a closed headphone is probably what we're going to recommend first, because a closed headphone is exactly that. It is closed around your head, around your ears. It does not let sound out. So if you're hearing a click track, you don't want the microphone in front of you to hear that click track, right? You don't want the headphones to bleed into the mic that you're recording with. In the case of vocals or acoustic guitar, that's very possible. Not really a problem if you're playing electric guitar DI'd into your computer, though, right? Stuff like that. So yeah, closed ear headphones are sealed, and they're going to limit bleed. Also handy if you're in a noisy environment, because it just kind of also keeps noise out. So the ambient noise of your environment isn't going to get into what you hear because you're kind of closed in with these headphones. So for most people, that's where you want to start. And then open ear headphones, breathe. They will let sound out and in. It's a much more natural listening experience. I think most people think they sound better. I do myself. It's more like you have two speakers in front of you again, but they're just attached to the side of your head.
Yeah, it's true. They are less fatiguing, I think. Most of them are more comfortable than the closed ones, so I agree. I still do enjoy my buyers that I'm wearing right now, the DT770 Pros. They are closed. They are a pretty popular model. I only like them with Sonarworks, though, because they are not flat at all. They have a very hyped top end. But with Sonarworks, I just like the way they sound. I like the way the transients sound. And I can mix pretty well with those. I just like them, maybe because I'm just used to them. So they are closed, and I still think they're comfortable enough to be working with them, for extended periods of time. But other than that, a lot of people, including you, Malcolm, have the Sennheisers, the HD 650 or 660 models. Mm-hmm. And they are probably the flattest models you can get, at least for that sort of money. Like, you can spend a lot more money and get something better, like Audices or stuff like that. But on a budget, I don't think it gets any more accurate than those. And they apparently are pretty comfortable as well, right?
They're so comfortable. It's like clouds on my head. It's awesome. They are open headphones, I want to add. Very popular. A lot of people even mix with them, like full on. That's what they do most of their mixing on, which is pretty awesome. That's even possible. Yeah, I definitely recommend them. We have a little question written in our notes here. Do you need two pairs? I do, but I don't think our listeners do. I think for tracking, you could probably get away with just the closed headphones. If you're not using any mics, you could get away with just one open headphone. You don't really need two. But so start with a good set of closed headphones, and then if you want down the line, you can grab another set of open ears. It's nice to have something to switch it up with. It's nice to have something to reference on as well, but not a mandatory thing. So for like keeping the budget low, the minimum viable product of getting your studio going, you don't need two sets of headphones.
Yes, exactly. What's pretty cool, I don't know if other manufacturers do that as well, but I use and really love Olo Audio headphones. They are a Slovenian brand, a European brand. They make like handmade headphones. They are made of metal and wood. They look gorgeous. You can replace all the parts in them. They are made so that you can easily repair them. And they have this thing where you buy them as open headphones, but you can make them closed. They are not super closed. It's not the same as like drum headphones or like if you play loud drums with them, it's not really working. But they are closed enough to use them for vocal tracking or they work well for most things. And you can just make the headphones closed by changing the plates on them and inserting like a foam piece. Like you just unscrew those plates, you put the foam in there, and you put a different plate on, and then they're closed. So that's pretty cool. I don't know if other brands do that as well, but my Olos do it, and I love them. They're super comfortable. They sound awesome. They look very nice. They have little to no plastic in them. It's like all wood and metal and awesome.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, they look really neat, man. When you showed them to me, I kind of want some for no reason other than that I want some.
Yeah. The reason I don't use them now for the podcast is simply because I'm too lazy sometimes to change those plates. And when they're open, I'm just afraid that I'm gonna have like bleed in my microphone, so I just go with the closed buyers for that.
Right.
But yeah, I still love them, and I use them for mixing as well. So there's that. And then there's a whole new category of headphones out. There have been plugins for that for a while now, but they haven't been that popular, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But now there are headphones that come with a software that are modeling headphones, like the Slate modeling headphones, for example. I don't know if there are others, but the Slate ones got released last year, I think. And I haven't tried them, but I know a couple of people who really swear by them. I know others as well who don't like them, so I don't want to recommend them as I haven't tried them personally. But it sure is an interesting product. So the way they work is you have a pair of, I assume, pretty flat sounding headphones, and then you have a software where you can choose your listening environment. You can choose to be in a mixing room or in a car or on a certain model of headphones or whatever. And that's what they are supposed to sound like then. I don't know how well it works, as I said, but I know some people who work exclusively on them now. And I think it's a pretty neat concept. And especially for DIY people, I probably would give it a shot and see if it works. Also, like the ability to check it in different environments, if that's really working, this could be really interesting because it will save you the car check and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe try them out. Or if you already use them, let us know how you like them. It's interesting. And I'm sure there are going to be more products like that very soon.
Yeah. I was really kind of taken aback by the amount of positive reviews because I just kind of have been watching the opinions online, and it seems like the majority of people are quite pleased with their purchase on those headphones. But again, neither Benny or I have tried them, so can't really personally recommend them. But worth looking into. I'd be doing all of the Canadian recording people a disservice if I didn't mention the Audio-Technica AT50Xs, I think they're called.
Why is that a Canadian thing?
Well, I don't know if it is a Canadian thing, but I was surprised that you hadn't mentioned them.
Okay.
So yeah, the model number is the ATH M50X.
Okay.
That is the most popular one anyways. But I have never gone into a studio that doesn't have like 5 sets of those.
Oh, really?
In North America. They are the standard over here just by a long shot. That's what everybody has. And every bedroom producer also uses those around here.
Okay. I think our equivalent here are the buyers, the DT770s or
cool.
880s.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
If we just had like different go-tos.
Yeah. I mean, the Audio-Technica are popular as well. I know them, I've seen them, but it's not the first thing that comes to mind. Like most people, I'm pretty sure the buyers are. If I look at the Thomann website, like the biggest music store in Europe, if you look there and you check the bestsellers lists, those buyers are, I think, top 10 overall products or so. Not even headphones, but like everyone has
really
them.
popular.
So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to mention them because, I know that a lot of the Canadian listeners probably already have them, and I wanted to validate their purchase. They're great.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, whatever works for you. I mean, it's when it comes to monitoring, whether you're looking at monitors or headphones, it's a very subjective thing too. So there are some tried and true things, and again, it comes down to brand trust and reliability, and there are certain qualities that these things should have. But at the end of the day, if you don't like how they sound, you don't like how they sound. So it's a personal preference. And with speakers, your room is important as well. So a set of speakers that works very well for me here might not work at all in a different room. And I think if you're buying speakers, unless it's just for like listening together in a room, then it doesn't really matter as much. But if you really want to invest in a good pair of speakers that you want to work on for a long time, I think there's no way around testing them in your environment. You need to purchase them or borrow them, see how they sound, work on them for a couple of days, and then decide if they are right for you or not. There's no way around that. Like even if you listen to them in the store, it's going to be totally different in your room.
Insanely different. It's almost pointless to listen to them in a different environment.
Yeah. And any of the big companies there, if you buy like expensive monitors, any of them will probably let you test them, or any of the big stores will do that as well. You have some sort of money back guarantee or trial period or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of part of it. I remember I reached out to Amphion once. I was pretty dead set on getting them. I didn't end up doing it, but I emailed and they were like, yeah, let's get you a set. And it's like, wow, these are like, it's almost $10,000 worth of speakers they would be sending me just to try out, did they even check my Facebook page to see if I'm a real person?
Yeah, I mean, if you buy a car, you test drive it, right? And it's like,
yeah, totally.
Same thing. So Yeah, when it comes to monitors, there are some recommendations that we can give you based on our own experience. But again, there are many more out there, and it's very subjective. I think you use and love the Neumanns, right?
I do. Yep. That's where I ended up going instead of the Amphions.
I think they have cheaper
very happy.
models as well. You have the big 310s, I think they're called, right?
Yep. And I upgraded from the KH120s, which are the smaller ones. And those are also very good. Honestly, I think they're the best speaker in their price range, because they're like, I think a pair of them was like $1,400 Canadian, which is, very affordable. And they really got me far. Nothing but good things to say about that. Now, that I would say is kind of like in the intermediate price range, where our listeners who are just looking for speakers just to, just like Benny said, just so you can hear it as a group. It's just easier to communicate rather than one person being able to hear the music with headphones and nobody else can hear what's going on. You need some speakers so people can tell what's going on. That's a little overkill going with those, right? So what we would probably recommend in that lower price range, under $1,000, is the Yamaha HS7s, I think they are. And actually they have a couple different sizes and they'd all be fine.
5, 7, 8, I think they're...
Yeah. They're just you've seen them. They're very popular and they're really like they're pretty good. I like them. Every time I've got in front of them, I've been like, yeah, this is going to be fine. And then the other brand that we both endorse is Atom. And you actually use Atoms as your studio mains for your mixing room. But their lower level stuff is also very good.
Yes. Yeah, nothing more to add. Like, they are very good. You either like them or not. They have these ribbon tweeters that are very accurate and very fast. They have a very fast transient response, which I really like. Some people think it's fatiguing or like too detailed in the top end. I don't know. It's personal preference. I just like them. Maybe they just work in my room. I just like them. And I know a couple of people who swear by them. I also know people who can't stand them. You have to try. But their entry-level monitors are still one of the best, I think, options in that price range, regardless of that. And I don't think if you're not really spending a lot of money on monitors and you're not that experienced, I don't think these things matter as much to you. It's like it will be way better than what you already have. It will be way better than any desktop consumer speakers or whatever. So whether you go with the Yamahas or the Atoms or the entry-level Neumanns or whatever, they will be, you will be stoked, I think.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah, and then there are the Amphions you already mentioned, which are very popular at the moment. They are passive, I think. You need an amp for them. They are a little more expensive. They are very, very awesome. But I don't think this is the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to building a studio on a budget. So
very, very top of the line gear for sure. So probably steer clear, but it's fun to talk about.
Yes, exactly.
Couple things we need to recap in this monitoring section. Earlier, you mentioned SonarWorks, that you like your Bayard headphones with SonarWorks because they have a hyped top end. If anybody doesn't know what the hell we're talking about, that is a software that corrects the EQ curve of your headphones and speakers. It can be used on speakers as well. Pretty cool. You should check it out. They actually have like a consumer product that's for like you can throw on your Apple earbuds or whatever consumer headphones you have to make your music sound better. And if you kind of just like want to get like a cheap idea of what they're selling. And both Benny and I are definitely big fans of this company.
Yes.
I think that what they're doing is great. And there's a whole bunch of other competitors coming to market at this time as well, which is kind of interesting. But anyways, that's a service you can check out. Not mandatory, but can be great. And then the other thing we need to mention is we've been talking about how rooms are inaccurate, and that's why we recommend headphones. But if you want to get a jump start on fixing that, head back to our episode with Jesko Lohan. He is just the authority on making rooms sound good, and for a surprisingly affordable budget as well. And the episode he did with us was so fantastic. I've gone and listened to it like twice since.
I agree that Jesko is my go-to resource for that. He has a website, acousticsinsider.com, where he has like free resources, blog articles, a fantastic YouTube channel, downloads. Like, you don't even have to spend money and we'll get pretty far with this material. And if you book him as a consultant, as a coach, He will plan your studio, your mixing room for you. It doesn't cost a fortune. It really doesn't. But you will have a full solution. You will know exactly what to buy or what to build. He's big on like building stuff DIY because it's much cheaper and more effective than most of the pre-made kits you can buy. So before you go out there and spend $1,000 on whatever foam kit for your room, go to Jesko's website and maybe reach out to him, because he might be able, or probably is able, to do something much, much better for you in your room for the same amount of money. So
yeah, definitely. I think our podcast episode with you will save you money if you just listen to that.
Absolutely.
With
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to go the monitor route, you should look into treating your room. And you can do a lot of it yourself. It's not rocket science. You can get pretty far. And SonarWorks, the software that we mentioned, is the last couple of percent. I think you should do as much as you can to your room first, and then whatever is still lacking, you can correct with SonarWorks. I think it's worth getting it anyways, but that's the right way to do it, I think. Don't just rely on the software, because some of the problems will still be there no matter the EQ curve. Like there's stuff in the time domain that you can't correct with EQ, but it still helps, and it's not impossible to treat a room and to improve it significantly. So the episode number is number 49. It's called Home Studio Acoustics and Room Treatment with Jesko Lohan. And if you go to the selfrecordingband.com/49, it will take you directly to that, or you can just search for it on your podcast app and listen to that. If you are in the academy, the Self-Recording Band Academy, my online course that I have, then there is a bonus lesson with a Q&A session with Jesko, a bonus workshop, which was very cool as well. And as soon as I'm going to be opening that up again, you get to watch this if you're not already in there.
Awesome. All right. Yes. Let's move on.
Yeah.
We've covered monitoring very thoroughly now, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe we should jump into amp solutions.
Yes.
What do you think?
Software, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
So what we mean with amp solutions is, other than your typical guitar amp, we won't give you recommendations there, because you probably have a preference if you use a guitar amp, or like there are just too many options and we don't know your music and what you're going for. So, but there are solutions that you can use at home without annoying your neighbors, and so you can. And also, it's a lot more convenient, and sometimes it will lead to better quality recordings if you go that route, even, especially in a DIY scenario, in a DIY on DIY projects. And that those things are amp sims, software guitar amps that you can use instead of a real guitar amp. And I don't really like the term real guitar amp or not, because all of it is real. It's just different tools. You just plug a guitar in and it makes noise. But the one is with tubes and analog circuitry, and the other happens in your computer. But the only thing that really matters is what comes out of the speakers. And both ways can be awesome, lead to awesome results. And there is stuff in the middle, like the Kemper that you use and love, Malcolm. So you can have a real amp, you can have a modeling amp like the Kemper, or you can use a plugin. Different solutions, different tools. And I sometimes use the analog stuff, and I sometimes use the plugins, and none of them is better. It's just different.
Totally different. Yeah. Again, the situation that we're kind of describing here is for people building a studio on a budget for DIY recording. So a lot of you might be in apartments, so you can't crank up an amp. It's just not possible. So this is that solution right now, right? Even if you can crank up an amp, does your room sound terrible, like we've been talking about just in the last kind of section of this? Then your recording of your amp's probably not going to sound great either. Are you any good at dialing in a tone with an amp, kind of thing? Software kind of takes a lot of this out of the equation for you, and can just give you great results immediately, essentially. Again, with that advantage of not being committed to it even. So you can just still send the clean DI to your mixer in the end and rely on them to take it to like another level of tone. A lot of advantages there. And number one advantage is that it is so affordable. Like a good amp and good mic and the recording chain is much more expensive than one of these plugins that gives you just a ton of good tones.
Yeah. I think what we both would recommend in this case is buying a third-party plugin, because you can get pretty far with stock plugins when it comes to mixing and EQs and compressors and stuff like that. But I still think that when it comes to guitar amps and simulators, the stock plugins still are not as great as some of the third-party plugins. I think it's
agree.
safe to say that. There are great ones, and it can be fun to play with the virtual pedal boards and whatnot, and there's fun stuff out there, but the dedicated amp sim companies, they make really amazing stuff. Like Neural DSP is what we both recommend a lot. STL is awesome. I like their Tone Hub software a lot. There are a couple of others. Brainworks has some cool amps. The UAD platform has some amps. I've not tried them. I haven't tried them, but I think there are decent ones at least.
Yeah.
There are a couple of options. There's an Italian company that I recently checked out that I liked a lot. I think it's called Nembrini, but I'm going to have to Google it. I like those a lot, actually.
I was like a really late adopter. Like it was only within like the last 6 months that I found an amp sim that I was like, oh my God, we got to just use this. This is so awesome. And that was Neural DSP. And I've used quite a few other ones, like, Slate had one and stuff like that. And to me, it wasn't quite there. It could get there. Like sometimes I'd get tracks sent to me that I'd already printed it on. And then, through mixing, I would get it where it needed to be. But as far as like recording through it, I was like, this really doesn't feel good enough to me. And the neural stuff totally just took that out of the equation.
Yeah.
If anything, it feels better. It's just so good feeling.
Yeah, totally. Neural, STL, and Nembrini, I just looked it up, is an amazing company as well. They have a great AC30 emulation that I really like. So, there are a couple of options out there. One thing I need to mention here as well is the Helix software and hardware. I wasn't big Line 6 fan, or I haven't been a big Line 6 fan for, I never really was. I just didn't like their products. But the Helix is really awesome. Really, really, really good. I just have to say that. So, that's definitely an option. And as I said in another episode, even with older or not as great sounding modelers, if you can turn off the cab and use a proper IR, that can improve it drastically. So whatever you're using, maybe get a bunch of good IRs. They are very inexpensive for 10, 15, 20 bucks, you can get cool IRs. Those are virtual cabs, like snapshots of cabinets and whole signal chains, basically, like cab, microphone, preamp, everything. And if you can deactivate the cab in your amp modeler and use one of those IRs instead, it will probably sound pretty cool. So it's worth looking into that as well.
Definitely worth experimenting with. Yeah. You'll find some stuff you like.
Yeah. Okay, so drum software is next on the list. That's a big one too. If you are producing at home in your home studio, in your bedroom, apartment, whatever, you're probably not going to be able to track drums properly. Even if you're in your jam space, your practice room, even if that's a decent room, it's probably not going to be really good. It's very hard to make a room sound like a really cool drum room, like a really professional recording studio room sounds. That's not easy to do, and you can, of course, record your own drums, and we have episodes on that, but it's going to be very hard to beat a well-programmed drum track with one of these software products.
Yes. It like as far as becoming a good recording engineer goes, getting drums figured out is probably the hardest part. Like that's going to be the longest learning curve. It's one of those things you never stop learning about, actually. You'll always be tweaking and trying new things for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And even as somebody that's been doing it for just decades now, if you put me in the wrong room, it's kind of out of my hands at that point, Like if we're in a place with like 6-foot ceilings and it's made of bathtub material, like it's just like, oh, okay, this is gonna sound bad no matter how expensive the mics are, no matter what preamps I use, doesn't matter what the converters are. Like nothing matters other than that room, pretty much. And not to mind, I mean, we've got episodes on how to make drums sound good, the tuning, skins, all that stuff, the player. But so drumming software is a fix for that. I really do prefer live drums, but it's just not an option for everyone. And drumming software can do a fantastic job. And again, the situation is you're building a studio on a budget. You probably don't have the space to even do one, or you're in an apartment again, kind of thing. So this is the only solution.
Yeah. And when in doubt, you should still, even if you're going to use real drums in the end, I think you should still have drum software and learn how to program it, because what you can do is you can program to the best of your abilities using the best software. They are not super expensive. And then you can hire a remote drummer and send them your programmed drums and then just see what you prefer. If you hire a good drummer with a good room and they track the real drums, you can compare them to your programmed drums and just choose whatever is better, I think.
That is such a good call. There's no reason not to do that. Yeah, that's great.
Because both is more affordable than you think. You can hire people, really great people, and it won't cost you a fortune. And you can buy the best drum software and it won't cost you a fortune. So why not just try and then try with one song and then use whatever is better for the rest of the record, for example.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. All right. When it comes to actual drum software, what do you prefer? I have clear favorites, but what do you prefer, Malcolm, or use most often?
I don't have a clear favorite. I do so little of it that I've got Superior Drummer. Seems great. I've got one called Enzo by RS Drums. Love the tones of it, but the velocities are pretty lacking. Currently, at least. There might be an update coming, I think I saw, which would be sweet. No, they're not going to have more velocities coming. That's not happening. But I mean, for metal, it was great, kind of thing. Those are really the two. I've got some other Contact ones that are just part of Native Instruments libraries, and haven't really used them. So yeah, I'm just not an authority on this. But Superior Drummer is obviously a recommended one. Easy Drummer actually is pretty fantastic as well. I've had some success with people sending me stuff from that.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, it's Superior Drummer as well. But my favorite are the Room Sound libraries. It might be because all of their kits are signature producer kits, sort of, and those are my favorite producers. It's just exactly the music that I'm listening to and that I'm making most of the time. So you can get a Kurt Ballou kit if you're a Converge fan or Kurt Ballou fan. You know what his drums typically sound like. You can get this. You can get a J Moss kit, a Bo Burchell kit. I think the Kurt Ballou one is a pretty signature Kurt Ballou sound, so it's not very versatile, I think. Right. I might, other people might think differently about this, but I can clearly hear that it sounds like Kurt Ballou. But with J Moss and the Blasting Room kit or the Bo Burchell kit, they are very versatile to me, and they don't have as much of a distinct sound. What's cool about the raw, like the Room Sound libraries, is that they are raw, untreated samples that you can tweak to your liking. Unlike some of the libraries that are heavily processed and sound good right away, but they have the sound that you immediately recognize, and they don't fit every project very well. Where the Room Sound libraries, they work on anything for me. It's just amazing. It's just crazy how they sound. And I really, really, really like them. I have an affiliate link for them. So full disclosure, if you go to theselfrecordingband.com/69, there will be a link to Room Sound drums. If you click that and end up buying, I get a commission. So I'd appreciate if you do that. But I would recommend them, and I have recommended them before I got that link already, because I have bought with my own money. I have bought all of the libraries, and I've used them for years. And I will buy anything they will be releasing, because I just really, really, really like how they sound. It's amazing. The bleed sounds super realistic. They have cool little features that others don't have, depending on the producer, tricks they like to use and stuff like that. Just very, very amazing sounding kits. And they are not expensive. I think they are $80-$90, something like that.
Yeah. They're definitely totally affordable. And yeah, I can see why they just work on everything, because they are just great sounding drums. It's like the end of the day, you hear it and you're like, oh, that sounds like an awesome kit.
Exactly. They are tuned very properly, very carefully, great rooms. And you can still use presets, by the way, that are processed. They come with a whole effects rack of compressors and EQs and model stuff and effects and saturation. So you can tweak them in the software just with any other good drum software. But you can also use them completely raw. And then that's what they sound like. They sound completely raw if you do that. So those and Superior Drummer are my clear recommendations. And then there are, of course, the Slate SSD5, the new one, sounds pretty decent. There's a free kit, I think, from that library that's actually pretty good. And then there are the Get Good drums that I know are pretty popular. And I think they sound great, but this is one of those libraries where I can tell when they are used. They have this distinct sound. So whenever people use the Moderate Massive kit, it just sounds like the GTD Moderate Massive kit. If you like that, awesome choice. They have other kits
Yeah.
as well. Definitely great. I just think they have a sound, and I don't want that on my records most of the time. But I might be
It-
wrong.
it's-
I'm sure I have listened to records where they have been used and I didn't notice. So
Right. Yeah. It's so popular for a reason because it is fantastic sounding, but it is so popular that, you can start to recognize it on other people's records and stuff.
it's the same like as with the older Slate samples. Like at some point,
Yes.
everyone was using Slate samples and you could just tell. And
Yeah. Exactly. So just be wary. I mean, it's great. You'll be happy.
Yes.
And especially for writing, it's just like set and forget it. You're good to go.
That's what I wanted to say. Sometimes that's exactly what you want, though. This ready to go, like right out of the box, great sounding kit. And in that case, you don't want the raw room sound thing. You want GGD because you drag and drop a MIDI loop in there and you click play and it sounds like a fully mixed kit. And that's awesome for writing, of course.
Totally. You might even have an included one that's fine for what you need in your DAW. Like the Logic drummers are pretty crazy cool. I think they even like write their parts for you if you want.
Yes.
Which is kind of wild.
Yeah.
I don't think Pro Tools has anything like that, unfortunately. You'll need something if you have Pro Tools. Just look into your DAW. You might already have a solution.
Yes. One thing I want to add here is, and that people confuse that often, that's why I wanted to mention it. Drum VSTs or drum samplers are not the same thing as a MIDI pack, for example. Like there are sample packs, there are software instruments, and then there are MIDI packs. So the software sampler, the actual instrument, is a piece of software that comes with samples and often also with MIDI loops, but it's the program that fires the pre-recorded samples, and it's the software that makes the noise.
Yeah.
And then there are sample packs, which are extensions most of the time for these programs. So you have the software and you want different sounding samples. So you can buy a sample pack loaded into the sampler, and then you have different options. And then there are MIDI groove packs or MIDI packs or whatever. Those are just MIDI notes, MIDI information that you can, depending on the map and the software you're using, you drag and drop them into your DAW. You use one of those software programs, one of those samplers, and the MIDI packs, all it is it's telling the software what to play. So it's it helps you with writing or being faster with production. It's just popular, often used like grooves and fills and stuff like that. And I recommend getting some of those, depending on the software you're using. Some come with a pretty decent MIDI library, some don't. But it's worth looking into those MIDI packs because they are pretty affordable, and it's a great starting point if you're not sure how to program drums.
Right.
You can use them for writing, and you can just build your songs with the pre-made loops, but you can also use them to learn how to actually properly program drums, because you get to see how those are made. You see the velocities, and if you like what they sound like, you could just study how it's done and make some yourself, So
yeah, definitely.
And there's one website that I want to recommend for people doing the punk rock stuff that I do often. It's called DIYpunkrock.com, and they have awesome sounding, well-programmed MIDI grooves for pop punk, skate punk, all sorts of hard rock and punk music, basically. And they have different packs with different maps for all the popular software products, so you can get MIDI grooves for Superior Drummer, for the room sound libraries, for Get Good Drums, and you just drag and drop them into your DAW, and they are mapped correctly. They work out of the box, and they are really, really well programmed and work really well. So I would highly recommend checking those out.
Cool. I didn't realize that you could have third-party sounds brought into Superior Drummer.
Not sounds, but MIDI grooves.
Okay.
These
Gotcha.
That's the distinction I wanted to
Well,
make.
no, I realized what you were saying, but when I looked I pulled up DIY Punk Rock, and it says the Pop Punk Legend Superior Drummer 3 preset pack. And it says a pack is a collection of 3 fully mixed kits.
Okay. Yeah.
So
that's even
now.
more than just MIDI grooves. It's in this case, it's apparently mix settings, effects. So it's presets for Superior Drummer.
Yeah. Okay. It must be mixing on the existing kits inside of Superior Drummer.
Probably, yeah. Case. But they also have just the MIDI grooves as I was describing. So you have these MIDI drum packs, MIDI expansion packs, where you can just it's just they are already programmed for you, and you just have to combine them and build your song with them, and it saves you a lot of time. And especially if you're just starting out, it's a great way to learn. So
definitely. Yeah, that's definitely cool. Yeah, to keep going even deeper. Some of them, like Easy Drummer, for example, and I think the newest Superior Drummer have like a kind of like tap to find rhythm kind of thing. So you could just like tap on the kick and the snare, boom, boom, pa, boom, boom, pa, and it'll find MIDI grooves that kind of have something similar to that. So it's like, I want something along these lines, and then you've got some options. Pretty quick.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. All right. Talking about MIDI and programming MIDI stuff, there are input devices, controllers that you can buy, depending on what you like. Some people like to program with a mouse. Some people like to do it with drum pads or an eDrum kit or with a small MIDI controller. If you want to program melodic stuff like bass lines or synths or pianos or whatever, you need some sort of keyboard. And there are like the full big digital piano or Nord piano keyboards that you can use, of course. But for most applications, programming bass lines, programming simple synth pads in the background, programming drums, stuff like that, there are small controllers like you mentioned the Korg Nano Key, for example, and I mentioned the Akai Mpk Mini Mk3. That's what I have here. They are fun. I have this on my desktop. Even during mixing, sometimes I think, well, it would be great to have this bass line underneath the real bass or whatever, or this pad, and I just reach over and play it and record it real quick. It's just super fun to have one of these, and they are cheap. Like it's under $100, and it's awesome.
Yeah, they're very affordable. Just to have something. I mean, you can do it with your mouse, but you'll find if somebody has any piano skills at all, it's probably better just to have some keys in front of them to get ideas out. Yeah, very affordable, and all these are used for is controlling the software instruments inside of your DAW, of course.
Yeah, so look into one of these. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. So you have your microphones, you have an interface, you have the software you record with, you have something you can listen on, like headphones or monitors. You have a guitar amp option if you can't record a real guitar amp. You have the guitar amp software, you have the drum software, you have a controller to actually properly record the MIDI stuff. All you need now is stuff like cables, pop filters, stands, adapters, all those things. Don't forget to really make a checklist and see what you need, because you're probably going to end up missing something in the end. Like there's always an adapter or a cable or whatever that's not included, and you still need
headphone extension cable. That's the one that's everybody misses.
Exactly, and those things break as well sometimes. So have a spare one ready in case there's a weird contact issue or whatever. Just have extension cables, have maybe signal splitters or DI boxes, whatever you need for the various instruments you're using, adapters, stands, of course, a pop filter, cables, stuff like that. Just make a list of all the things, go through your whole signal chain and buy all those things, because I've been there, it's really frustrating if you're excited, you want to set up your home studio, you're connecting everything, and then there's one critical piece missing that's like $3, but you just haven't ordered it, and now you can't use your stuff.
Yeah. Totally. And that you'll always be finding more stuff you want, just little things that help, whatever they are.
Exactly. And now there is a specific reason, at least for me, why we haven't included plugins on our list. And at least for me, it is because you don't need them in the beginning. I think the stock plugins with any of the DAWs we've mentioned will be totally fine. You'll have everything you need. You'll have compressors, you'll have EQs, you'll have saturation, you'll have limiters, you'll even have multiband tools. The stock plugins have become really, really good and versatile. And I don't think, unless you have all those things that we've been talking about in this episode, unless you have everything and are really happy with everything, I don't think you need to buy any third-party plugin. Maybe get a FabFilter EQ is something that we've been recommending on another episode. Maybe if you want a really flexible EQ, but even that, go get all those things first and then start looking into plugins.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, the only plugins really to be concerned about are those virtual instruments or amp solutions that you may need, kind of thing, right? The actual things that make the album have the parts it needs. But having a niche compressor is not going to affect if your songs are good. So don't worry about that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's it, I think.
Yeah, that's part 2, finished and wrapped. That was a big series, but yeah. And again, of course, you have to apply your own situation. If you don't sing, you don't need to worry about half of the stuff in the microphone section, right? Like it's all dependent on what you are trying to do with your music and your band situation, of course. So you might be able to get away with half the stuff, or you might need more than this. Who knows, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Also, stuff like this changes, obviously, over time. There's new technology, new products on the market. So if you're listening to this a year from now, we might have done another episode like this and maybe updated it. Or like, I think we should probably do one every year or so at least. And that's also the reason why I update my gear guide. So if you have already downloaded the gear guide, you might have the 2019 version, because I didn't do one in 2020, but I have updated it in 2021. So you might want to download again, because there are different interface recommendations and stuff like that in there. I will update it more regularly from now on. And just keep in mind that stuff like this just changes. The interfaces we recommend today might not be the best choice next year. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would say, like, if we're going to do some predictions, I would say the interfaces is going to be one of the most radically different over a 12-month span, probably. It seems like the entry level like of quality seems to change the most rapidly.
Yeah. People will
another prediction is those amp sims are going to be just even more commonplace.
Yeah.
Within 12 months. That'd be my second prediction.
Yeah, totally. And I also predict that people are still going to be using SM57s 10 years from now.
Yeah.
So some products just are evergreen and just as good as always, and other products change. But in the digital world, it's quicker. We will see a lot of things, a lot of new products in the modeling, in the modeling category of products, like modeling mics, modeling headphones, stuff like that. Maybe, who knows, maybe modeling monitors. I don't know. Like all sorts of things. That's the stuff that's changing pretty quickly. Interfaces, everything digital. But the tried and true headphone models and the tried and true microphone models, they will still be around, I think, for a long time.
Definitely.
Cool. Let's wrap it up. See you next week.
All right.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.